Hi, welcome back to the Louise Gallery and Studio. I'm going to show you that mark making is so important to me. Sort of developing a line that's unusual and has interest, and constructing ways of achieving this is really important to me. I've got an incredibly well equipped studio. I've got printing presses and a number of different mediums: oils, watercolour, acrylics, pastels, printing obviously. I haven't done screen printing, embroidery, fabrics, felting. We do loads here. And the thing is that it's how you develop these mediums and how you use them that really fascinates me. And people seem to really respond to it as well. They want to see something unusual and different. And mark making provides these lovely different unusual lines and draws people in. They sort of go, how's that done? How on earth has she achieved that? So I'm just going to show you a few of my techniques and the things that I've made in order to be able to do them. I'm just going to use one colour. I'm using blue. But if you used various colours and layers, and especially if some of them were translucent and you added mediums to make them glazes and so on, you get this really lovely layering of effects. You can use it in pasto as well and then try and put these textures on top of it, and it creates something that's so unusual, and the mark makings are so unique. So enjoy. So you can get your paint and dilute it down. If you are diluting acrylic right down, it's best to use an acrylic medium, so you maintain its bonding ability, especially if you've got it on canvas. So I've mixed up a lovely sort of blue, and I'm going to give it quite a lot of water. So it's fairly dilute, but there's also some bonding medium in there, and I will use it both thin and thick and see what it does, and show you how you can use it, because it's not just the mark making, it's actually how you apply the paint to the things that you are using. And here are some of the tools that I've created to make some different mark making. I mean, you can buy templates, you can buy stamps, silicone stamps, all sorts of stamps, you can buy stencils, but I think when you start creating your own bits and pieces, you get more unusual marks. So I've created a few stencils just by cutting out bits from wallpaper, and I've folded over the bit at the back so you've got a thing to use as a stamp, and they're remarkably effective. So there's those sort of things. This one's lovely. It was inspired by somebody's sketchbook where they just punctured through paper in order to create nice marks. But that's a really arbitrary, organic set of marks, so I'll see what that's like. And I haven't attached a little stamp thing. I'm going to have to do it with my fingers because the two sides are very different. That one, the puncture marks protrude and create an interesting shape, and that one is more just circular marks, so we'll see how they print. There's some buttons stuck onto a piece of card with a little attachment to help you actually manage it, handle it. This is just stiff card which I've cut into sort of feather-like finishes so that those will make different marks. I mean, I've glued it together, but you can just use a clamp to hold them together. You can do this just wrapping string round a piece of card, but you can also do it with elastic bands. I've done something sort of creating a bit of palette knife thing. Now this is only card and probably won't last very long because if you get it wet it's going to soften it. But you could do it with plastic. And I made my own brush. This is just strings, and I've stuck it between two boards with lots of glue and put it in between a weight. So I've got a lovely great big random brush. And this is a collage of protruding bits of card, so we'll see how that prints out. And same string, and these are handmade brushes. So I've just used an old brush that's sort of dead, the end of it. I glued it on, wrapped wire around it, and I've put this gaffer tape, or this is an aluminium tape, just to cover up any sharp bits of wire, and these will make lovely spidery abstract marks. And these I've made, glued the rope together, wrapped thread round so it all sets really hard in the glue, and this thread was wrapped round really tightly. And again, you've got some lovely funny little paintbrushes. Oh, and I mean, anything is useful. There was a funny little brooch I got. So I'm going to just see what marks that makes. A good idea is to seal this, and you can seal it with bonding glue, just what you'd seal plaster with before you paint it, just so that it doesn't simply perish once it's wet, and gives it a bit of resistance to the water. With inking anything up, it makes a big difference how you ink it up, how intense and thick the ink is on the thing that you're using. So the best thing to do is to get a few different methods of inking up. I've got a palette here that's flat, so I can fill it with a thin layer of paint and use my roller so that I can apply paint just to the surface and not to the depths of something. I've also got the back of a Ferrero Rocher chocolate box thing because it's got a flat surface, so I can roller into it. So you can apply the paint and then get your roller and spread it out so it's even onto the roller and not too thick as well. And then you see how you ink something like this up will be very different applied with a roller or with a paintbrush, and we'll have completely different ways of marking it. So let's just see what that does as it is. Not much. I mean, it improves. We'll try it now with a paintbrush where it's all evenly covered all over. And I think this is where as well you have to accept, you have to go with what you get. You could put this on a piece of newspaper first to get rid of the excess, or not. Just try it on your surface. Yeah, I mean, it's not doing much, is it? The only thing it does is that those marks are quite unusual. Just try again. I mean, I do quite like it. I've done a couple of prints with this, and I'm now going to just see what happens once most of the excess has been taken off. And I mean, I suppose with a piece of paper like this, you could get a clean roller and just roll over the back of it and then see what happens. You see, then you get something like that, don't you? So try again. Let's just see what happens. All rolled down. Okay, well, that's that one. So I've got a series of, it's just wallpapers that have their own finish on them in any case. Right, so I'm just going to try them and see what happens. So I'm going to get some paint and just try and just touch the surface, not too much, and then just see how that prints. I mean, that's dead cute and would be really lovely on a journal or something, but also, you know, it's whatever you find use for, isn't it? So that's sort of painted on, and you could sort of really get it in, cover it, get it thick. Let's see what happens there. There you go. So that's just with one of those. See what it does another time, because there's still quite a lot of ink on there. Well, paint. There you are, you see, look, they're lovely. They create some really nice marks. And see what would happen if I just rolled something on. So I'm just going to get the roller and I'm just going to touch it to the surface, because I mean, it doesn't apply the ink in the same way. You see, look, here we go. And you get that sort of thing because it's the thicker amounts of paint on it. And I mean, they're really nice marks. There you go. Here's a button. I'm just going to touch the paints onto the tops. And obviously you can put all sorts of different colours on here just to see what happens as well. And just apply it and see what happens. I think this one's fairly obvious. There we go. Ooh. Right, I'm going to put more paint on. Be much more generous. I've got a much thicker cloth paintbrush here, so it's sort of holding more paint in the first place. It is so like printing, isn't it? I'm going to do it on top. Just but even, you see where the initial marks were that were thinner, on top of the thicker marks, the thicker paints is lovely. So you could just utilise that, you know, different tones of colour. This is a tipping table, I haven't tightened it up enough. There you go, so that's that one. And this has been sealed, so you can just wipe this off with a cloth. What else have we got? Right, these are interesting. This one, I obviously need more paint in my palette-y thing, so I'm gonna pull this to one side. So I'll put some more paint in here. Right, and this is where I should be wearing gloves. Put my roller to one side. And then put this inside. No, that's not good enough on there. So I'm actually going to apply paint to it with a brush. I don't mind if it goes everywhere. And I reckon this probably really needs to be saturated because this is the first time this has been used and it hasn't been sealed. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Right, so get your paper, roll it over. Nothing, or very, very little. Well, that's surprisingly boring. It's got not enough of it is taking the ink, is it? Or, you know, not enough of it is actually touching the surface of the paper. I'm putting on a lot of ink now. It's not ink, is it? It's acrylic. It's because it's these so-like printing techniques. Okay, this is hilarious. Right, let's try again. I mean, they're unusual, but they're not particularly interesting. And I don't know whether it would respond to a canvas. Okay, so that's that one, which can just be cleaned. Right, let's try this one. And again, I'm going to put lots of paint in. Again, I wanted the two sides of this, so I haven't got a clever little applicator thing. Just a piece of bent card. So I'm going to hold it like so. Rub it into the paint, make sure it's all covered in paint, like it's not. And again, because everything's not the same height, it's not like a lino print where everything is the same height, so it's all going to touch the paper at the same time, or the canvas, whichever you're using it on. So it's really unpredictable how it's going to work. I mean, I love that. I'm just going to see if you turn it over and put the roller on it. And then you've got something more like that. So that's quite interesting. And those were lovely in their dollopiness. But again, I think I'm going to try this again with more ink on it, like so. And I reckon this would be interesting with lots of different colours on it. It's the same like within collagraphs. The initial press doesn't always work so well because there's not enough ink on there. Right, I'm just going to see what happens if you actually roll over it, because I like getting the marks. Oh yeah, I mean, that's lovely. It's just how can you use it just like that, you know? And yeah, I mean, those make interesting shapes. And actually, I really like the thing in itself. I really like that as well. But all these I'm taking to a class. I'm going to have to wash it all. And this is the one that's been actually put underneath a press to try and flatten all the textures, because they were all such different levels. It wasn't printing. It was only printing the proudest level. So I flattened them all, because when I wet them, they went lovely and soggy. They've become more uniform in height. So when I print it, it's like the roller. You get a much more uniform image. That's because they're so wet and not enough paint on it. But I mean, you will get used to this. Paint on a roller would be really nice. And this is quite thin, this paint now. It's been watered down quite a bit. But you can see the marks that it makes. Yeah, you see, like that. There we go again. Oh, that's lovely. There you go. I really liked this thing as well. So I'm just going to dip it well and truly into the paint. So I really bunged it in the paint. And then I'm going to just see what marks it makes. Again, they're marks you could never achieve without this thing. I mean, they're lovely and random and bonkers, and I suppose the whole thing will alter as it's used. It's funny, isn't it? The actual rope had a twist, a bend in it because it had been wrapped round and round something, but it causes some really nice, interesting gestures. So there's that one. Now, this one's interesting. This is a piece of card. I'm just going to dip it into the inks and then just see what marks it makes. Because it's so stiff, I'm going to take that off. I don't need that. Ah, that's beautiful again, and that's really lovely. What happens if you just drag it through? Ah, they're lovely again. Well, I like them all. Right. Now this one is absolutely bonkers, isn't it? I've got a better one, a smaller one than this, and I'm going to use the smaller one. Heavily wet it, and then just drag it through. I think what you have to do is really go for it and let them be what they want to be, obviously. Oh, that's gorgeous. Some of that's, look at that. Used just squashed down. It does really nice things. Let's see what it does. So you've got one set of marks. All that in all sorts of different colours would make really unusual marks. This was some of this, but I'm just going to see what it's like when you. And I'm also just going to see what it's like if you just use it as a brush. Now, because it doesn't actually hold the inks so well, I suppose the only thing to do would be to make it runnier. But I mean, that's unusual. I don't know whether you like these things. I love them. This is the netting that's been wrapped around a tube. I'm just going to ink it up nice and thick and show you that how it prints. So it's really useful, this little thing. And that's just netting that's been wrapped around a tube and glued down with PVA glue. I had made one previously, but this tube is slightly convex, so it only prints to the outside. So I'll just ink it up and I'll show you. Let's just put it on there and see how it prints. Yeah, can you see? It's printing just on the outsides, more or less. I mean, if I really, really press down on it, I think I could probably get the convexness out. But the best thing to do is to just get a tube that isn't convex in the first place. I mean, that's still nice. So I've got two there. When you wash these, they get a bit damp as well, so they get a bit sort of more softer. So maybe, like this one, once it's damp, all the filaments are flat and you just get this much, much more responsive line. That works really well even when you do it really thin. Okay, I also tried this on a piece of, so it's just mount board or card with the netting pulled over the top of it. And I'm just gonna ink it up with a flat brush. I mean, you could be much more controlled about this and ink it up with a roller. Get my paper and just see how that prints. So it's different again, probably not as good as the roller, but it has an effect. I mean, again, they all have these slightly different ways of marking. I do really like it. It could come in useful. Such a simple little thing. They're just netting from an orange bag. I just wanted to show you this one, just card that's been cut in various shapes, and you can see it makes some really lovely marks. You can use it like a pen. There you go. And if you bond it with bonding agent, it's just PVA glue that's been watered down, so it's not so absorbent, this will last longer. But you can also use it, the same system with credit cards and so on. The only thing is the card is slightly absorbent, so it's able to absorb some of the paint and will mark make for longer than a credit card. There you go. The last thing to consider with it all is that it's the actual substance you print it on, or the substance you paint it on, really makes a difference. This is paper. If it was on canvas and it was hanging from a wall, or you were working at an easel, you'd have to remember that it might drip. But you can always work on a canvas flat down. You can always work on a primed canvas and then stretch it, so you literally use it like Pollock did, just spread all over the floor and then put it over stretchers. You can use it on canvas that's been primed for different types of things. So you could use acrylic, will go on unprimed canvas and will absorb into the canvas like a watercolour paper. You can actually prime a canvas with watercolour primer, or you can use a acrylic primer, and all those different surfaces will respond to the paint in different ways, and you've got to give it a go and see which one you prefer and which one works for you. So look, we've got all these gorgeous tools that we can use. It just goes on and on. There's a lovely little butterfly here, which was just out of, I think it's a bubble, a kid's bubble. Let's see what that print's like. Again, it's lovely. Depends what you want. So it's up to you to decide what you want, and then what's left over are interesting in themselves. There you go. Enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and I hope it's of some use. I'll take photographs of the whole lot of them together, put them together against each other so you know what sort of things they produce. I mean, there's some really nice bits and pieces there. Thanks for watching, and if I could ask you to like and subscribe if it's of any use to you, because it really helps me. All the best, and see you again.